Hello, I'm Jack Patrick Lewis, State Representative here in Ashland, also one of the state reps in Framingham, and welcome to Beacon Hill Briefings. Today, this show is also being recorded for WACA's podcasts, so it's also available if you want a break from looking at our faces on video. This audio podcast is available on Spotify, YouTube, and WACA-TV radio. Today, I'm being joined by one of my colleagues in the legislature, Representative Brian Murray. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jack. It's nice to be here again.
It's great to have you. You reminded me that I had you on the show before the pandemic.
I guess it was. I mean, so much of our life revolves around COVID, pre-COVID, that type of thing. But yes, I was here. The studio looked a little bit differently, so you've made some upgrades for my return.
The studio has changed, but you and I haven't aged a day.
Yeah.
I won't go back to verify that. You and I came in actually the same day to the legislature. We're just finishing up our fourth term, our 8 years. By the time this airs, I'll be able to say congratulations on your re-election, and we'll be starting our fifth term together January 1st. Looking back, what are you most proud of over the last 8 years serving in the legislature, other than the great opportunity to serve with me?
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about that and try to be retrospective. I mean, I've certainly enjoyed the job. Coming into it, there were a lot of things. I really didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. My background was primarily on the municipal end of things. I went into the State House very, very infrequently. So that was kind of a whole exposure. But I think, I think we've all been involved in bills, significant or insignificant. But I got to tell you, the thing that really I get the most satisfaction out of, and it's helping constituents. And we go through the same thing. During COVID, primarily, the unemployment claims were through the roof. And during those times, people, their very livelihoods are at stake. And everything seems so hopeless. They can't get in touch with anyone to try to deal with state agencies. It's horrible. And it's very gratifying, and it has been, I think, to help these people. And some of the email responses that you get, the thanks that you get, that you've truly made a difference, whether it's dealing with, DOR, the RMV, DUA, I mean, just pick one. That to me really day to day has been the most satisfying part of the work.
So if somebody lives in Milford, Hopedale, or Mendon,
yes.
Did I get the communities right?
Yes.
You're their state rep.
That's correct.
And if they have any issues with anything remotely connected to the state, reach out to you. And I always joke that there's no magic wand in our desk drawer. But most of the time, if folks are entitled to certain benefits, if they've lost their jobs or are struggling with something related to mass health, we can make sure they get a phone call, that somebody gets back to them. It's unfortunate sometimes that legislators have to intervene to get people the support they need. But I know your office, all of our offices, are always willing to do that.
Yeah, and the guidance even, supersedes that. I mean, recently one of my town's highway surveyors, wanted some direction on how to do a truck exclusion on a roadway. So, I mean, I've had familiarity with that, so I was able to send off the process and outline it for him. And it just continues like that. So yes, you do the personal benefit to the actual personal constituent, but to the municipalities, there's a lot of guidance that's given as well.
And then there are those requests that we never would have imagined on the campaign trail that we would have received, where even when we check in with colleagues, people maybe don't have an experience with such a request, but you lean on each other, you reach out to the appropriate agencies, and you get an answer. And I think you, like most of us, are willing to acknowledge what you know and the areas where we could always learn more.
Absolutely. And that's been probably, a differentiating part of the job as well. Because coming as an attorney, I've been in private practice for 37 years, but also from the municipal background, things are fairly straightforward most of the time. Now, in this particular job, you really have to know a little bit about a lot, if that makes sense. The breadth of issues that we get presented with sometimes even shock me. It's like, my goodness, I don't know anything about this, you know? So that's kind of been an eye-opener as well. And then, of course, we get the things where we can do absolutely nothing about. They want us to vote something in Congress, and I have to get back to them and say, I don't go to Congress. That's someone else. So you deal with that also.
Yes. And then there are the requests that we can't directly do something, but if it's a local issue, be put in touch with a city councilor or a select board member. If it's a passport issue or an immigration issue, the congressional team or one of the U.S. senators can take the lead on that. And I always joke that when I wake up and roll out of bed, as I walk to the coffee machine, I start checking emails like 5:30 in the morning, and I can never anticipate what the email is going to be, because every day is a little different.
Absolutely.
And every day there are emails that come through asking or advocating for things that the 6,000 emails that came before them didn't even get close to. And it keeps us on our toes. You mentioned, in local government beforehand. What did you do locally before?
I was first elected to the Milford School Committee in 1989.
Okay.
I served there until 2001, and at that point I moved to the Select Board. I had just gotten reelected in April of 2016 when the prior state representative announced that he was not going to be running again. So the time frame, we have to get our signatures in by April 30th. So that gave me about 3 weeks to decide, number one, do I want to do this thing? Mm-hmm. And number two, how do I do this thing? So I jumped right into that, and we got elected in 2016. I resigned. I stayed on as a select board member until the next annual election, which was April. Mm-hmm. So when we were sworn in January of 17, I was doing double duty just until April. And now, I've closed my private practice, and I have a part-time appointment as town council for the town of Milford. So that's been a new and interesting experience for me as well.
I'm always curious, colleagues who come in and they've been on the school committee or select board, so they're used to being one of 5 or one of 8 or somewhere around there, and then all of a sudden they're one of 160 in the House, one of 200 in the Massachusetts legislature, and they're the newest person. And watching folks, no matter what their background is, sort of come to terms with there are similarities, and it is a very different animal at the same time.
It really is, and I remember John Fernandez, the prior representative, who was a good friend of mine, and we served on the school committee together, and we talked about this. He said, this is a totally different job. And, I just echoed that a couple of months ago, dealing with an issue with the RMV and what they're trying to do to commercial driver's license, which caused me to file a bill. And I just said it again, this job is so different from serving on the municipalities, because like you say, when you're on a board, our select board is 3 members. So,
one of 3.
If something needs to get done, you can probably put it together pretty easily. In our job now, there's a vast sea of stakeholders, both elected and unelected, and each one has particular ideas, opinion, input, etc., and a lot of that has to be weaved through, dealt with, to really try to make progress, particularly on a bill, but even if you're trying to facilitate something as well.
Mm-hmm. We sometimes hear complaints that, and it's hard, I'll only speak for myself and not put words in your mouth, but that somehow the legislature moves too slowly, but it also doesn't compromise enough. And that we need greater diversity of voices, but we also need to move faster. And it's to pass something in the House, as this is the case in every state, a bill has to pass the House and the Senate in identical language. And has to be signed by the governor, and then potentially, overriding the governor's veto. That takes time. And even though there are a lot more Democrats than Republicans, we have conservative Democrats, we have progressive Republicans, we have a variety of colleagues who all do their best to represent their districts. And Mendon is very different than Ashland, which is very different than Arlington. But at the end of the day, we need to get a majority in the House and the Senate to agree to something, and then the governor to also agree to it. And so to do things right, to truly compromise, sometimes the final product isn't something where I agree with 100% of what's in there. And sometimes it just takes more time than those of us who want great change.
Oh, I know, and that's,
get.
you know, I mean, you just basically outlined the democratic process.
Yes.
And that's what we operate under. And, you know, I deal with it, and I'm sure you do too, constituents who feel very strongly about a particular issue, are absolutely certain that this is the way to go, it needs to be done, no one in fact would disagree with them. And then when I meet with those folks and I explain to them, we have a democratic process. We have public hearings. Stakeholders from all areas in this particular point that you're talking about have opinions, ideas, and need to be part of the conversation. So you think that this is a great bill, and it certainly may be, but someone who doesn't would say X, Y, and Z. And that needs to be wound into the process. And sometimes it takes people back a little bit, like, okay, yeah, well, all right, I can see that. I said, so then meanwhile, that has to weave through the process that you've just outlined in terms of the public committee, the public hearing rather, at the committee level, probably multiple committees, and then, you know, a full House, Senate, and governor. So yeah, that's the process we operate under. But, you know, as I outline it to folks, it's like you feel a certain way about something, and that's fine. There are other people who feel differently. These are their reasons. This is what comes forth. And I found when you give people information, when you give them some beef to the issue, they're definitely more understanding of it.
I think the other thing that I'd like to reflect on with constituents is around the end of the legislative process. Like, at the end of the day, we have a bill before us. And if the bill came from conference committee, there's nothing we can do to amend it. It is literally an up or down vote. And as legislators, I just came off of a campaign myself, some of the things that were used against me were pieces of bills that I never agreed with, but at the end of the day, if 95% of what I'm fighting for makes it into a bill, and 5% is something I disagree with, that's an A. And that's a really good day as a legislator. And so it's so interesting trying to balance the reality of how a bill actually becomes a law. If we were more creative and had great voices, we could record a Schoolhouse Rock video about how it actually works. But at the end of the day, we're going to vote on things, and we're going to have a record that's peppered with things that we 100% support. And they're going to be, I point to almost every single bill we've passed, sentences or paragraphs where, you know, if I had the magic wand and I was a constituent of one and the sole voice, maybe I would do it differently. But to your point, for every email we get in favor of something, we often get an email in opposition. And at the end of the day, we have to vote. And every time we take a vote, it makes one group of people very happy and another group of people very angry. And most of the time, a much larger group of people who are just maybe not aware because media doesn't cover most of what we do. I was going to ask you your favorite part in your district, but I think that's unfair because you love all of your communities the same. You love all of the businesses in your communities the same. But I will admit, I almost only go to your district to go to the Mendon Drive-In. And I remember learning, like, not only that Mendon was near Milford, but every time my family goes down and spends money at the drive-in, it feels like we're going back in time to the 50s, but it also feels good because I can drop some money in your district.
Yeah, no, that's a great attraction, the Mendon Drive-In. It's been around, oh gosh, I mean, I grew up in Milford. It's been around as long as I can remember. I mean, I remember going there when I was in high school with my friends and a date, and back then, you're too young.
No, yeah.
But you had the big gray metal speaker, which was hanging
Yes.
on a post, and you had to take it and put your window up because you rolled your window, and this metal thing kind of hung on your window, and that's the sound that you got, you know, from the drive-in. So, you know, that business has persevered, it's changed, it's adapted over time, and it's still an attraction. And there aren't many drive-ins left, certainly in the Commonwealth. So it's really nice to have that in the district.
And to have it down the road from where you live. And
That's
even for
right.
me, 35 minutes to go to the drive-in. We can do it. And growing up in the 80s in Ohio, my first drive-in experiences were the thing in the window.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so you
I miss
did
it
remember
because, you know, every time you go to the drive-in, somebody's car, you have to leave the radio going, and somebody's car needs to be jumped, and the great folks at Mendon Drive-In come out, and they'll help you get underway. But yeah, if I were you, I'd probably never leave the drive-in and not accomplish as much as you have. You've been in legislature for 8 years. You currently serve as the vice chair of the House Vice Chair on the Joint Committee of Transportation. And then you also serve on Ways and Means, Healthcare Finance. There's a couple more, but I'll just say for your constituents who are listening, who maybe those committees don't mean as much as to some as they would to others, you're a vice chair and you also serve on probably the most important committees that you could, Ways and Means and Healthcare Finance. Can you tell us a little bit about what it means to serve on those committees, but also to be the vice chair of Transportation?
Yeah, so I didn't realize it during our first term, and if you remember, we had some reps that came in midterm or something, and I got the call from leadership, and they said, we have to take you off one of these committees because, you're on more committees than anybody. And at that point, I was on global warming, House Ways and Means, General Ways and Means, revenue. I didn't even know. So I said, fine, whatever you want to do is fine. This particular session, I've enjoyed it a lot, being a vice chair on transportation. I've really found that it's the type of thing that has issues that I can relate to. It really deals with practical problems that really need short-term and long-term attention. I've been fortunate to serve under an excellent chairman, Bill Strauss out of Mattapoisett, who, oh my gosh, and I know I'll get this wrong, but I think he's been chair for over 25 years. I know he's been in the State House for a number of years. So he's not running again. We're going to be losing a wealth of information and experience from Chair Strauss. But I have benefited certainly from his leadership, developed contacts with the MBTA, Mass Highway, the Registry of Motor Vehicles, had a tremendous learning experience in terms of how those entities operate, the issues that they have. I'm still member of, as you indicated, the Joint Committee on Healthcare Financing, which has handled all of the major legislation dealing with the healthcare industry, which is facing some serious issues, even beyond the Stewart Hospital private equity fiasco. There are a number of bills that are pending right now, House and Senate versions, dealing with prescription drugs, healthcare reform, that hopefully we'll get resolution on before the term ends because it is important legislation. I also serve on the Economic Development and Emerging Technologies Committee, which I've had since the start. That's a great committee. I really enjoy that as well. Again, some of the issues that we deal with in terms of the life sciences industry and other new industries that have issues and are looking for assistance and aid. That legislation has been very, very interesting to me. So, I've enjoyed the committee work. I always make it a point to attend the public hearings. We all have different obligations, and it's tough to make those. But I find that you really learn a lot being at the public hearings and listening to the legislation that gets presented.
So every bill that's filed, and for folks tuning in, if a bill is filed by a certain day in a session, it's guaranteed a hearing. And a hearing means that anyone in the Commonwealth can come into the room or come in virtually to speak for, typically it's 3 minutes, but sometimes if it's like a 12-hour hearing, they'll limit it to 2 minutes. And so residents have that ability to do that on any bill they want. And every bill, no matter the topic, has an opportunity for a public hearing, which is something I don't think we talk about enough. The legislative process can be a complicated one, but it is very clear, and I think there's a lot of transparency about, bills are filed, bills get a hearing, folks know the role they can play. And of course, at any time, folks can reach out to their state rep or state senator to advocate for a bill. But each bill is assigned to a committee based on its topic, and then that committee makes the decision if it moves forward. Looking back over the last, how has it been 8 years? But somehow 8 years, both of us in the legislature, what are some of the bills that stand out that you're most proud of passing?
I don't know. That's tough to gauge. Certainly we've had some major legislation on some of the bills that I've sponsored. Most recently, in the long-term care bill, I was able to get the certified medical aids bill in as an amendment on that. that came to me from the nursing home industry, essentially dealing with workforce shortages, particularly in the nursing area. So the idea is to have these certified medication aides that can administer medication to the patients, to the residents, and kind of offset a little bit of the responsibility of nurses, and kind of get maybe more bang for their buck in terms of the workforce. So that was nice to get in there. You know, in terms of the veterans context, under the Medal of Liberty, I was able to get the law passed so that the Medal of Liberty is not only given to family members of veterans who were killed in action, but also veterans who died in training exercises. So oftentimes you read about unfortunate events where a Marine stateside training may have lost his life in a helicopter crash or whatever it is. At that point, they had not been eligible for the medal, but I didn't think that was fair, and a lot of folks didn't as well. So that was very gratifying in the sense I got to work alongside with the National Guard, the Adjutant General and his staff, and at that time Governor Baker was in place. He came up with the Medal of Fidelity. So that was quite a process, and that was nice to get in as well.
Each of those bills were important. Folks had worked on them. You invested more time than I think folks realized to get them across the finish line. I doubt any of them made it to the front page of the Milford paper. Yeah. And so I think that's one of the things, too, that takes some getting used to with his job, that we can invest 8 years of our time focusing on an issue that's helping countless folks, but it's hard to put what you just said in a social media post. Like, you can try, and you do, we all do, but it doesn't have the same connection to folks in the same way that an old-fashioned newspaper headline would. And because now we pass fewer small bills and now more larger bills that have bills contained within them, which I think is efficient, and people need to, I think, media needs to collectively take a deep breath and realize that one bill that's 500 pages can actually have way more in it than 20 bills that are only a page each. But it's then hard to show, hey, look, this whole page of this bill is something I've worked on, because there are 500 pages of other things that other folks have worked on. But I think your focus on your community, veterans, the workforce shortage has not gone unnoticed in the legislature. And we're not done yet. We still have 3 more months at the point of filming
right.
here.
Yes.
We're going to get some more things across the finish line. And you have an election. You're running unopposed, so congratulations.
Thank you.
January 1st, you and I will be sworn in for
Yes.
our 5th term. And immediately, we then have to file bills for the new 2-year term. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on and what you think you might want to focus on next
Yeah,
term.
so I think, and you know as well, certainly after the election, but before, like you indicated, New Year's Day, that holiday time period, that's traditionally been the area, the time period where I've kind of thought about things and kind of reevaluated what I do have on the table that may not have passed. So that'll be the first thing that I'm looking at. And there are a couple of bills that I feel strongly about, but I've got to talk to the advocates to see if they want to go forward on them. So the first thing I think we kind of do, or at least I do, and I'm sure you do as well, is kind of evaluate what we have out there outstanding, and then going forward, what needs to be addressed that's approached towards us. So, I mean, I actually have a couple of transportation bills that I've been working with the chairman on and the staff to try to maintain some continuity on the committee in terms of going forward for bills that got passed, but got submitted but not passed, but are definitely going to come back next session. So I'll be looking to handle a couple of those. I just talked to one of the advocates that deal with the elder law attorneys. They have a couple of bills that they're looking at in terms of durable power of attorneys and those types of things. The gravitation, I guess, and I think this has just happened organically, but I guess the gravitation that I have to these more technical bills that are very, very important to a segment of people, but they're very, very difficult to try to explain broadly. And it's not the climate bill. Do you know what I mean? But, a particular bill I have is how Mass Health prices a life estate for a family that has someone in long-term care. It's a huge issue in that field. So I guess I've kind of gravitated to that area, and it's those kinds of bills that I look at. One of the other bills that I was lucky to get passed through the housing bond bill was a very, very important bill in terms of simplifying how to get real estate out of the registered land section of the registry. Again, this is not glamorous stuff, but it's highly technical, and I was able to work with the real estate bar and also the House Judiciary Committee, which, Chair Day is excellent, his staff is excellent, and we got that passed. So very, very important to the real estate community. So I guess, like I said, Jack, I haven't really thought about it, but it seems like those are the kind of ones that I gravitate towards.
It makes sense, and you've had success, so it makes sense to continue down that road. Our time has gone by very quickly, and in closing, looking back over the last 8 years, just curious, is there anything you wish you would have known in the beginning, any decision you made that you wish, in hindsight, you could have done differently? Regrets? We've all had a few.
Well, I think back on, I didn't even know how to get in the building. When I first got elected, I hadn't been in the State House so long. But I think you understand, because you're in a decision-making position as I am. And I think everything we do is evaluative. So everything that we make motion on, similar situations arise later on, and I think we look back and evaluate what we've done. Well, let me see, I did this that way, I did that, I talked to this one, I did that. I should be doing this. So, I don't know that it's anything that's that stark, that black and white, but it's all an evaluation process of what I have done or what we have done, and as we go forward, how we can perfect what we've done.
Good advice to be reminded of as one of your colleagues as well. Yeah. Since I asked you the question, I'll answer it as well, just to be fair. I think when you come in, you don't know most of your colleagues, and we all did other things beforehand, but no system is quite like the State House. No. And you quickly realize that nothing happens in a vacuum, nothing happens alone. It's not great speeches or tweets or social media posts. It's not praise from a loud group of people that gets anything accomplished. It's relationships and collaboration, and a lot of compromise as well. And I, for one, wish I would have learned that earlier, because you come in, you're excited, you come off the campaign trail, and you then have to quickly realize that there were people who were doing this work before you, and after you and I are put out to pasture, there will still be people continuing to do this work, and I like to think now we play a role for the time we have to advance it as far down the field as we can. But bringing some humility into the job, I think, goes a long way, and acknowledging that some of the stuff we spend a lot of time working on is dismissed by a lot as minutia or behind the scenes, but it changes lives. And until you need government to play a very specific role in your life, maybe you don't think about what it means to have a family member on Mass Health who is going into long-term care. Brian, it is an honor to serve with you, to have been sworn in with you 8 years ago, to be a Metro West rep with you. I'll keep going down to your district. I'll try to spend more money in some of the other parts, not just Mendon. But thank you so much again for making the time to come to Ashland, to come on the show, to share with my constituents and the greater region the great work you're doing.
Great, thank you. I enjoyed it as always.
For those tuning in at home, until next time.